Greetings, Culture Warriors. This is Jeff Vieira, author of Culture is Everything, and the host for this Dispatch from the Front. We've been talking a lot lately about companies that have really foundered in the wake of the pandemic. It's no surprise. Cash flows have dried up, as we talked about. There have been supply chain disruptions. The lockdowns have made it very difficult for some companies and some industries to take in cash at this time. But I want to talk to you about a company today which has been around for a long time, was having some trouble before the pandemic began, and now the pandemic has apparently tilted it over into going out of business forever. This is a story from CNN, by Jordan Valinsky from CNN Business, and the title is Pier 1 is officially going out of business. Pier 1 is officially closing up shop after receiving approval from a bankruptcy court to cease and liquidate its retail operations. The troubled home goods retailer had its plans authorized Friday to begin liquidation sales across its 500 remaining stores once they can reopen. Its stores have temporarily closed because of COVID-19. Pier 1 aims to have all of its stores permanently shuttered by October. This is not the outcome we hoped for when we began this process. We are deeply saddened to move forward with winding down Pier 1, said CEO Robert Riesbeck in a release. The retailer asked a federal judge last week to close the Pier 1 brand as soon as reasonably possible because of the pandemic and failing to find a buyer to rescue the nearly 60-year-old company. It decided that an orderly wind down is the best way to maximize the value of Pier 1's assets. Pier 1 said its plans to sell its website and intellectual property in July. Orders placed on its website, which is currently promoting a going out of business sale, will continue to be fulfilled. The company filed for bankruptcy in February following years of decline. It once had more than 1,000 stores, but has struggled in recent years because of online competition and big box chains like Target and Walmart strengthening their home goods offerings. It's becoming increasingly tough for smaller retailers to compete against them, especially this year when their larger competitors didn't have to close their stores during the pandemic. Tuesday morning, a discount home good chain with around 700 stores filed for bankruptcy last week. Okay, so there's a little bit to unpack there. Perhaps surprising that Pier 1's only 60 years old. It's been around quite a long time. It seems like it's been around forever. But 60 years would place its founding. So if this is 2020, then you're looking at it haven't been around since 1960. These companies tend to start as, mom and pops and then grow into regional players and then eventually national and international players. Pier 1 from the start was about bringing high quality imported home goods to the average American family. Take a quick look at what Pier 1 says about itself. And I couldn't find their values per se, but this is what was available. About us. You know what you're looking for. Inspiring, fun, colorful, creative, and definitely out of the ordinary. You have a knack for finding just the right furniture, lighting, tableware, decor for your home. And that's just what you find at Pier 1 Imports, because we search out the world's most gifted artisans, find and develop fashion-forward trends, and handcraft exclusive products with you specifically in mind. We're all about presenting new ways of seeing and experiencing your home. Our furnishings, rugs, art, and scented candles are created to spark your imagination, present inventive solutions, and reveal more possibilities than you ever thought possible. You'll know what you're looking for when you see it at Pier 1. And that's probably written pretty recently, but certainly it's been consistent with the vision of the company since its inception. It was a place that you could go which would have something different for your home. So you didn't have to have what everyone had because they went to, a department store or the local hardware store or what have you to outfit their home. And it was able to offer those items relatively inexpensively. Pier 1 was kind of the Marco Polo model. It was go to exotic places, find things of interest, bring them back, and make them available to people. And it was fairly successful. Fans of the movie The Blues Brothers from 1981 or 1980, I can't quite remember which, will remember that in the scene where the police are chasing the Blues Brothers through a mall, that they make a comment on Pier 1 Imports, that place has everything. Or this mall has everything. I forget which they said. And so it's had kind of a heightened visibility. It wasn't quite an anchor store in any mall it was in, but it was certainly common enough across the American landscape that I'm sure many people listening will have set foot at least in a Pier 1 from time to time. And it was a classic browser experience. They had lots of stuff kind of laid out in the store in different quasi rooms. And you just kind of wander around and pick up things. And a lot of it was just odd knickknacks. Little accents for the room. And then over time, you started to have competitors. Restoration Hardware comes to mind. Sur La Table for the kitchen. You started to have these little niche goods stores come up. And at the same time, Walmart and Target started really improving what they offered in that regard. So then it became just really simple. You can find good stuff at those places. You just go. It's really convenient. It's cheap. And that eventually is kind of what undid Pier 1. But I would ask this question, is if what set you apart was really going out and finding unique things, isn't there a place for that today? There are a lot of things that are difficult to find. You kind of have to know they exist before you go looking for them. I spent a couple of years stationed in Japan. And one of the things I loved about Japan was some of the kind of unique food offerings that they had. You go to a Japanese grocery or convenience store, and you find all this wonderful stuff. Very, very few of those things are available unless you happen to live near a station, near a specialty Asian market where you can get those things. We have to drive an hour to get some of these things. But some of them have broken into the mainstream. For example, I was a big fan of Pocky, which are these little shortbread sticks dipped in chocolate. Now you can find them in some of the bigger grocery store chains, but that wasn't the case for most of the time. And so if you know Pocky exists, chances are you can find it. You can go online and find some place to get it. But there's so many things that you would like that you have to know. You have to be in the know that those things exist first. And the advantage of a company such as Pier 1 to bring the various cool things of the world to you, it seems to me like there's still a value for that. Maybe it's just in a e-com kind of application, but there's still something unique in the buying experience of being able to look through a bunch of things you didn't even know existed. That's something. I was stationed in Turkey for a while. And one of the things that's common to Turkish culture is drinking tea in these little hourglass-shaped glass cups. And man, it took a while, but we finally found those cups online through Amazon, and we're able to get a set of them to kind of recreate that experience of drinking chai, which is what Turkish tea is called, those many years ago when I was stationed there. But how many other people would really enjoy that experience if they just had a chance to do so? Probably a lot. YouTube's been wonderful in that it allows us to see how people live all across the world just on an everyday basis. It doesn't have to be a special documentary or what have you. And so as long as you know the country exists, you can go look up everyday life in whatever, and you'll find a ton of videos that give you little interesting cultural touch points that you can use for further exploration. And as you find things that suit your taste within those cultures, then you'll probably want more of it. And so it's a shame that a company that was built around that idea of kind of bringing the world to the American homemaker is going out of business, because the need probably hasn't diminished. It's just a problem with the way the retail channel was set up that they held on to for too long. They were founded in the 60s. They kept that. They should have really gotten a big boost come the 90s, because by then transportation had become so much cheaper. Maybe that's what led to the rise of their competitors, because they had to have a certain amount of volume to bring all that stuff back. But it just seems like they got caught up in a model where their cultural values and the purpose of their company was good, but somehow along the way, they allowed other things to crowd out that message. And instead, perhaps, of investing, the thing about it is that people's interest in different cultures around the world changes over time. So most famously, when they found King Tut in the 20s, that created this really viral trend in interest in Egyptology. So all of a sudden, having Egyptian things was kind of cool. And people throughout the West started trying to acquire things that were Egyptian. And it impacted art and design movements of the time, as you might expect. But then, of course, eventually that fad fades and people get more interested in other things. In the 70s, there was a huge interest in Africa, in African culture, which has since waned. There was an interest in Asian cultures in the 70s as well, brought about by the success of martial arts movies. And so it became something that people would seek out. And so that tends to move around the globe over time. And if your interest is kind of finding those trends before they emerge, or becoming even the trendsetter in that case, well, then you run your business a little bit differently accordingly. You think about the J. Peterman company as presented in Seinfeld in the 90s, where they had that kind of weird exotic focus of, we're going to find the world's coolest things and make them available to you. That's the kind of focus that you need in order to make that model work, because it's always based on how fresh your stock is in terms of the latest cool item. So I wonder if Pier 1 didn't lose sight of that as financial consideration started to come to the fore, as ownership changed over time, as that mall-based retail culture shifted. If they started to lose sight of what it was that made them a place that people would go, where they would drive by and they would see the Pier 1 sign, and they go, I'm going to look in there, because I know if I've got somebody who's particularly hard to shop for, chances are I'm going to find something cool and interesting in there, and that'll help out. I think the lesson here is it's important when you begin an enterprise and you have that crystal clear focus on what its value is, on what its purpose is to be. And then you do the hard work of making sure that you establish a company culture which supports and nurtures that value. You've really got to fight like mad to hold on to that over time as things change. Walmart, as Target started to come on strong, Walmart abandoned for a time its value of everyday low prices. And they started taking a beating for it. So they were trying to compete with Target on kind of higher end, faddish design kind of things. And it really didn't suit them because that's not what people were going into Walmart for. The thought was always, oh, well, we can just stop people from going to Target and they'll come in here instead. And that's how we'll win. But the problem was people who trust Walmart because they know they're getting the best price on something now start going in and seeing stuff that looks overpriced to them. And now they start to wonder, am I getting the best price on it? And they start to look at other options. And that unintended consequence results in the strategy being kind of a fail. So Target kind of baited them into fighting on their turf, which was a big mistake. And it's sidelined, the unsung heroes of Walmart are the people in their purchasing department, because they're the ones who negotiate the deals which make possible everyday low prices. And so in effect, you take them off the table, you take their greatest strength and you start ignoring it. If this was a football team, it was a team that was built to pass, and then you decide you're going to run all the time. That's not the strength of that team. And the results generally are not going to be good trying that strategy. They're not geared for it. Moreover, it goes against the culture. The whole culture is about delivering that value. And now you're saying, no, what we really value is having cool looking stuff. Well, that's something different. So you wind up attenuating that crisp focus that you have on a shared value that makes your company work. And you start to lose focus and let that bleed out. And fortunately, Walmart caught themselves kind of recommitted to their value of everyday low prices. And ever since, they've been doing great. I think that's the lesson here is, do not get so enamored of other things that you lose sight of what it is that you do. A lot of companies in the retail space have become very enamored of e-commerce because the e-commerce companies are basically eating their lunch. But they're not asking the question why that is. How are they able to do that? What is it that they're offering the customer that they're not? And they'd be better off doing that and then focusing on how they can do that within their values. One way to combat the fact that people are accepting the online experience rather than the classic retail experience is to make the classic retail experience even better. Make it unique. Make it something that draws people in. And that doesn't have to cost a lot of money, but it's probably an investment that's likely to return something to you rather than starting up the 95th website when that's not your core competency. You got to bring in a bunch of people to do that. And there's only so many people that can do that. But the notion that you're going to beat Amazon at the e-commerce experience and you're going to do it while devoting a tiny fraction of the resources they do, since it's their bread and butter, that's probably not a viable option. When the article talks about, kind of competing with these online retailers, you can't compete on their ground. You have to compete on your ground. And to do that, you have to know what that ground is. Because let's face it, fads come and go. Trends come and go. But culture is everything. Thank you. Have a great day.